It's as if Cool World and Ren and Stimpy had a baby. We're talking Christmas in Tattertown. Hit it. It was 1988. Steve Winwood rolled with it. Quentin Tarantino had a cameo on The Golden Girls. Snapple lemon-flavored iced tea was distributed nationwide. And Ralph Bakshi created a fever dream of a Christmas special. I'm your host, Jerry D, with another episode of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, and fads. If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, we got it covered. Now, joining me is a very special guest. You'll know him as the host of the bodacious Conversations with Robbie Sherman podcast and Sherman Sucks at Sonic playthrough page. It's Robbie Sherman. Robbie, how's it going?
Good. It's good to be on here today. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. And thanks for suggesting this crazy special. It's bananas, but I really dug it.
It's a trip, ain't it? It's really nuts. And this was supposed to be a 39 episode series.
I can't even imagine that.
Well, we would have got this. This could have been like one of the most incredibly large ensemble casts of any animated show in history. If you think about all the little players that are messing around during the special, I actually like the details around the main story more than I do the main story because I hate Muppet's voice. Like, her voice is so grating, and I think it would have just played better if they'd given her like a more conventionally pretty voice, like something about the way it goes. Like I can't stand it. It's awful.
It's real gravelly, And
then her henchman has a similar voice that's like it makes them hard to distinguish sometimes when they're going in and out of frames. It's very strange.
Definitely. I mean, this is. And okay, first of all, let me say I really did like the special, but it is out there, and I think I liked it because it kept getting weirder, and I just kept wanting to know where it was going to go. It's just one of those strange mixtures where I think in a lot of ways he was kind of ahead of his time when he did this one because there is a lot the Nickelodeon later did, in the early '90s with like Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life and things like that. There's a lot of it that really kind of reminded me of that type of cartoon. And you can tell they're already starting to move away and from the that more realistic style of like He-Man and G.I. Joe and head more towards the cartooniness of of those early 90s cartoons.
Bakshi he's as much of an innovator as he is a person working within a frame of tradition over the years, and this little short is a pretty good showcase for how his mind functions because he's always trying to dust off old concepts and apply them to the world as they are today. And throughout his filmography, which is far more acclaimed than this little short will ever be, probably.
Definitely.
It's pretty apparent that he's always looking for parallels in the past to the current day, like whenever he's creating. And Heavy Traffic is pretty concerned, with how things, how generations work and change between each other. Mm-hmm. And this special doesn't quite go on to that type of social satire, but it does have like a lot of like animated details that suggest criticism about how like cartoons function nowadays too. Mm-hmm. Like this thing is a little insane in its gags. Like it is so wantonly violent, and like no one seems to be like genuinely hurt too. I guess because they're all junk, and like you have this pretense that they're not real human beings. You can just go hog wild with it.
Which, by the way, I have a lot of questions about this special, and we'll get into it. But before we get into like the plot and everything, like what's your experience with this special? What's your history with it?
I had maybe seen it once or twice growing up on Nickelodeon, but by the time I was a mid-teenager, Nickelodeon had become something way different. It had
Yeah,
become much more of these like youth sitcoms and
right,
teen reality shows. It wasn't really so much about animation anymore. I had like experienced the great 90s like run of stuff through reruns mostly because they were always showing them as filler, and that was the only thing I ever wanted to watch on Nickelodeon. And this
right.
probably popped up somewhere along the line. I I've been through the larger Bakshi filmography within the last 10 years or so, and this came up in my head recently, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to go over it with you, because I was wondering if it would spark any memories I'd had about it. And really, it was a blank to me when I first started watching this thing. I didn't know what the hell was supposed to be happening, honestly, because I, I just remember maybe like the title sequence where they go into the little universe of Tattertown through the
Right.
book, which is such a like intense bit of fairy tale logic that actually makes you commit to, that they just get sucked into this book into Tower Town for no reason, and now they're trapped in Tower Town forever. And they're how is this little girl going to survive in Tower Town where there's obviously
that,
no food because everybody is just plastic and metal junk?
that was that was my question too. Is like they don't resolve it at the end. She's still there. So
Yeah. There's no question about like if she's going home. She just taught everybody the meaning of Christmas, and they celebrated and they ended the cartoon.
which is insane. It's like
I wonder if there's like plans in like Bakshi's workshop or something, and then we're really gonna kick the plot into overdrive. We're gonna bring in the alternate cartoon dimensions or something, but it just never got made because Nickelodeon canceled this thing before it was even shown to the public. Really, yeah.
yeah, this was I think you're right. You're probably right. There was, I bet, some idea that she was going to be in Tattertown, and maybe towards the end she'd eventually make her way out or something. But of course, since they didn't pick up the series, they just stuck with this little special here. I mean, we're left not knowing what happened really. So I assume she either starved to death or she found some way to survive on random junk.
Yes, yes. Did you take humor in how like it was all staged and put together? Did you find actual humor in it? Because frankly, like I didn't so much find humor in it as I did just interesting, strange things happening more than
Hmm.
actual things that are humorous. Like at one
Right.
point, her little doll friend that looks like Felix the cat just like breaks down, like all his body parts just completely fall down, and it is
Yeah.
one of the most discombobulating scenes. But like it's body horror almost, like to
Right.
think about like this little like doll thing just falling apart. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Well, he is junk, I guess. but but then she like sews him back up. So somehow
Yeah.
she knows exactly not only how to sew, but how to fix a stuffed doll, sew him correctly because he's able to still move around and use all his limbs.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned Cool World, because I guess this has a little bit of parallel to Cool World in that Tower Town looks somewhat menacing. If not all the people in it aren't menacing, then Tower Town itself looks very broken down and menacing in the way that the opening scenes of Cool World would reflect
Right.
later on. And touching on the body horror element that seems to be present in this thing for no reason whatsoever. Cool World probably had a lot of body horror in it,
Hmm.
but it was never fully realized because Bakshi lost complete control of that film.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this was like an early experiment in this type of idealization about how like little control people have over their bodies, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, he had like big ideas, and as I mentioned earlier, I think he really was ahead of his time because this could have fit perfectly. Nickelodeon kind of, I mean, they passed on him because of some controversial stuff in
Yeah.
in one of his other episode, one of his other series, and in some
Yeah,
of the
the
plot
Mighty Mouse
lines,
series.
the Mighty Mouse, right? So they had issues with like tobacco and cigars and a few things here and there, but it's like that was pretty common in like Ren and Stimpy later on. So it's literally within a span of like 5 years, they're kind of already changing their tune. So I think if he had just made this 5 years later, he would have been, I mean, it would have been a huge hit.
I'm not sure what the hell gave them so much confidence in John Kay, especially considering what we know about him in our day and age. But they took it. They gave him a lot of time, and it seemed like every time an animation studio would give Bakshi a chance, they just like shortcut him in some way. He made a
Yeah.
couple of shorts for Cartoon Network, and they
Hmm.
just got underfunded, and they got cut up to the point to where he doesn't even recognize them as his own work anymore. So I'm
Oh
not even
wow.
sure what. Yeah, I'm not even sure what the hell they did to him then. I mean, I can't tell you the names of them anymore. It's been a moment, but
Right.
those were okay cartoons. They're very easy to find and seek out.
Right.
This yeah, this cartoon has a lot of like great Fleischer Brothers influences, and that's part of the reason why I'd kind of like to see a full series of this.
Yeah.
Like maybe they could tailor this into something that's actually like gut busting funny, you know.
Right.
The thing about something like Ren and Stimpy compared to this is that Ren and Stimpy is genuinely funny when it's not being like degenerate. Like
Right. Yeah. I agree. I completely agree.
I don't like to give that guy too much advertising in this day and age. But the fact of the matter is, you know, those shows have still aged pretty well on a certain level for what they were when they came out.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally.
Yeah,
Now the idea for Tattertown kind of came around from, I guess, in high school. He had this idea for a comic strip called Junktown, which is basically the same kind of thing where, you know, the random stuff of everyday life kind of got thrown
yeah,
away and it kind of ended up here. So in a way, it's kind of like the island of misfit toys from, you know, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And of course, it kind of, you know, Bakshi being Bakshi and kind of throwing a little bit of a not political, what's the word, like a social
yeah, yeah.
spin on it. You know, he was kind of trying to make light of the human condition, I suppose. But you know, he kind of came up with that idea, and it morphed eventually into this bit that he picked up, or the Nickelodeon was supposed to pick up, I should say. But this special, I don't really know if I got any of that from the special. You know, I don't think there really was much of that there. You know, and then you go look at his other stuff, like what is it, Wizards or Fire and Ice, and
Yeah,
you can definitely pick up on some of those types of themes. And here it almost, I mean, I guess Miss Muffet's her desire to get away from Debbie is kind of maybe a commentary on
yeah.
something, but at the same time, it could just be humorous. I don't know.
I think that's like a commentary. I think this whole thing is like a commentary on parental like urges and the way creators feel about like what they make.
Yeah,
Because like
could be.
Junktown is all about discarded items.
Hmm.
You know, Muffet doesn't want to even be associated with her creator anymore because of how
Right.
she's been treated. And in this day and age, I guess we would apply a gender thing to that too, because Muffet doesn't like being put up in dolls' clothes,
Right.
or it appears to be, but she keeps wearing them, so I don't know what that's about.
Although she
You
does dress
know,
like Santa later on, so so you
yeah,
might be
that's
onto
true
something.
too. Yeah, but they have all these like strange, unresolved, complicated layers like that just overlap throughout this thing. Um,
Yeah.
I would say here was something I noticed. Okay, there's like a John Wayne gun that like has a feminine
Yeah.
lackey that
Yes.
follows him around, and this guy, this John Wayne impression is the same damn John Wayne impression from his third film, a blaxploitation parody, and yeah, and I don't know how long he's been doing this John Wayne like gag in all his scripts, but Bakshi really seems to like taking down John Wayne a peg.
Well, and then the Christmas tree as well. He was had some sort of stereotypical like New York,
Yeah,
you know, Jewish man's accent, you know.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was like an affectation that he tried to pull off. And I mean, it was definitely I would say stereotypical, but I mean, I thought he did a good job, but I've never been there, so I can't say if he was or not.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's some like good hyper stylized dialogue towards the beginning of it, but somewhere along the line they just stop with all that and they're just speaking in very broad like
Yeah,
tones, and like the animation takes over for actual plotting.
yeah, yeah. No,
And
you're right.
they
Yeah, yeah.
they go through several layers of Tattertown that are awesome to behold, but I can't ever keep them in sequence. Like whenever I try to write notes about them, they just come out in gobbledygook because it all flies by so fast.
It's
I
definitely
really, I like Muppet's bullets as well. Like they're so stupid during the final aerial fight at the end that they end up just killing each other because they
yeah.
think they have to go after each other for some reason.
Well, because she's dressed like Santa, and so when
Oh,
Santa passes
okay,
by, she goes after Santa, and they're like, "Oh, the two like things are attacking each other, so maybe we that's what we're supposed to do."
okay,
And
okay,
so then they start going
yeah,
after each other. Yeah, they're not the smartest bullets or bombs or whatever they're supposed to be.
they sure are not.
But I guess we can just go ahead and get into it. We're kind of already jumping in, which is cool. I don't mind. But so basically, like you mentioned, a young girl named Debbie, and then her doll. It's like her favorite doll, Miss Muffet, and her stuffed little like puppy or dog. They're kind of somehow sucked into Tattertown. Again, never explained. It just happens. And as soon as they get there, Miss Muffet has like some sort of crisis of like an existential crisis, essentially. Like, I'm here, what am I supposed to do? I'm alive now. What is life, what is
Yeah,
all this? But I gotta flee from my oppressor, I suppose. And so she tries to get away from Debbie because she doesn't want to dress up in the pretty dresses and all that. And it's an odd way to start a special. But you're right, I think if Muffet's voice had been a little more soft spoken, maybe less harsh, I think her turn to evil would have come out a little bit more creepy and been more effective.
totally. They could have done like a very high pitched like girl's voice for that. And I think it would have contrasted better with the Tattertown ruffians that she later commands.
Yeah, Tattertown ruffians. That's like a
What
good
else are you gonna call them?
no, that's it's like a great name for like a punk band or something. The Tattertown ruffians. I like it. So yeah, Debbie tries to get Miss Muffet back, and she's like chasing her, and of course there's a nice little slapstick bit that ensues, and Miss Muffet ends up being flung quite a distance, and she's relieved because she doesn't want to be anywhere near her owner, or her
Yeah.
former owner, I should say. And this is where she becomes Muffet the Merciless, which is, I guess, kind of a play on like the Flash Gordon Ming the Merciless, I suppose.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, I guess so. I guess so.
I just that was what I thought of when I thought of the Merciless. But she meets like Sydney the Spider, and who I guess himself has tried to take over Tattertown, and
Yep.
he right away, she's like, just with her yelling and screaming, pretty much commands everyone,
Yeah.
including him, and he starts following her,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah. The spider ends up being like used in Cool World too, like almost the exact same type of spider design is
Yeah,
in Cool World. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's funny how many little like things in Bakshi's career this calls out to.
yeah. The only thing I didn't really get from this was the Lord of the Rings
Oh
vibe.
no, no,
Yeah,
there's none of that fancy in here at
yeah,
all.
yeah. And I liked the way he wrote, because he's famous for using the rotoscoping and kind of bringing rotoscoping to the forefront, and
Yeah.
a lot of studios kind of downplayed their use of rotoscoping, but he was like, why? It's a cool tool, let's use it. And so he kind of really brought that out. But I didn't really get a whole lot of that here. And I think a lot of that was because of the design. So like Debbie herself, she got her short little black bob hair, but
Yeah.
she kind of sticks her neck out a lot. And so it's almost at like this odd angle, almost at like I don't know, not 90 degrees, but I mean, it's definitely at an odd angle, her neck there.
This is one of Bakshi's more angular productions.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like this one is based around like distortions of common shapes to
Hmm.
create new dimensions for his cartoon characters. Like
Right.
everything in this feels not even on a model. Like everything feels very spurious. You know, like
Yeah.
they had everything written out, and then they just went ahead and threw themselves into the animation and got it together. And yeah, it all feels very raw.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a pretty good quality rip on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it for nothing. Yeah,
That's how I watched it. Yeah.
yeah.
But at the same time, like you have, like you're talking about, you have that particular style, but then it's like mixed with that old, like you said, those old Fleischer cartoons, you know, from like the 30s and 40s. And so it's an odd juxtaposition, but it kind of works because of how they're going about everything, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and the backdrops have really good dimensions too for the cartoons to play
Right.
around in. And I think that helps sell the animation a lot better than another way of approaching it would. You know, like a lot of the backgrounds feel like big, like paintings, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it
they sure do.
sells, yeah, it sells Tattertown on a level like a lesser cartoon wouldn't be able to do.
Right. Exactly. So there's that, and meanwhile, while Muffet, excuse me, is trying to take over Tattertown, we get Debbie, who basically is like, hey, it's almost Christmas time, and and starts explaining to her new friends, her new junk friends, what Christmas is, and they don't seem to get it. But you know, of course they wouldn't. They're inanimate objects, I
No,
suppose.
they have no emotions.
No.
They don't care about Christmas. They don't care about capitalism. They don't care about anything of the
Right.
sort. You know, like
Right.
it feels like so spurious to what's actually happening in the show too when they start bringing in the Christmas element, because she's just like screaming to like abandoned junk that has no need to sympathize with their human overlords that have like turned them into garbage. Yeah. It's a
it's
very strange turn for me.
it really is, because so she start by the way, I forgot to mention this whole thing is narrated by Keith David as a saxophone, which
Yeah,
is just
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. He did what Idris Elba wouldn't do. He went the sexy saxophone route, you know, like
Yes, which, you know, for some reason, if Keith David is going to be any kind of instrument, I think saxophone is what I would imagine him being. So
honestly, it's beautiful, like in a way. Like I keep telling myself, like, maybe this is a racist thing, but it's still pretty cool. Like, like he brings a lot of life to the cartoon. It makes
yeah.
it a lot more easier to take with him around, kind of narrating things and filling in little details.
Yes, I completely agree. I do like that Charlie Adler is the voice of Sydney the Spider.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and of course Charlie Adler has been in. He was in Rainbow Bright, My Little Pony. He was Lowlight in GI Joe. That's where I knew him from. He was Tex Hex in Brave Star. I mean, he was also the voice of the Mastermind in Police Academy 6. What?
I don't I don't know what Brave Star is.
It's okay. It was a cartoon from the 80s. It was basically Texas, but like in space. It was like space Texas. And
Oh,
Brave Star
okay.
was the sheriff. He was the marshal there. And
Well, that sounds completely insane.
it
Let's
is,
move on though.
and it was awesome. But it was insane, yeah. And Tex Hex was like the main villain. In fact, there's even a Christmas special where they kind of play on a Christmas Carol with Tex Hex. It's odd, but
Does it have a Jonah Hex vibe at all to it?
not as much. No, it's
Oh,
there
okay.
is an anthropomorphic horse that's
Okay.
kind of
Well,
like a cyborg, so that's kind of cool.
okay. Okay. Well, yeah, that is okay.
That's about it, though. That's like where it stops. But yeah, so he was the voice of Sydney the Spider, which I enjoyed as well. But so Muffet's like trying to organize, you know, this whole Christmas event. She sends like all her new friends out to look for Christmas items, and so that little, I don't know, cat kind of friend, whatever it
Yeah.
is, ends up finding a wreath that tries to sell him like some cigars or something. It was
Yeah, yeah, that was very strange.
there.
But I think the way they set it up was like, oh, this guy is a bad guy trying to
Right.
sell a cigar to a kid. But I
Yes.
think maybe that kind of helps justify the cigar thing a little bit better, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like Ren and Stimpy would just show people like smoking big old cigars
Yeah,
and
they would.
enjoying it, you know, they wouldn't
Yeah.
care. Why would this be such a problem if they're like posing this as a bad thing to do?
I don't know. I think it's still because in the 80s it was still, even though it was starting to break down, there still was a lot of censorship, I suppose. It might not be the right word, but they really tried to tone down some of the violence and things of that nature. So, P-Man and GI Joe and all, Thundercats, they always ended with some sort of
Yeah, yeah,
PSA, He-Man could never actually hit anybody. Most of the time he just picked them up and threw
yeah,
them. He never used a sword. So there was still a lot
yeah.
of that, trying to tone down the violence, tone down anything that they perceived as bad. And it really wasn't until the 90s when we got a lot more of that, just, like Batman
Yeah.
the animated series, where he could punch and kick,
Yeah, it's
stuff like,
glorious.
you know
Feels good.
yeah, yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah. But so yeah, she finds a Christmas tree, she finds a wreath, she gets emotional because the wreath reminds her of one that she used to have, and so the toys are, or the junk is just like, she's leaking. I think there's something wrong with her, which
Yeah.
I thought that was a great bit. And they're trying to cheer her up, of course, and she starts explaining the meaning of Christmas. And meanwhile, we cut back to, again, Muffet and Sydney trying to organize an army.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, it takes a very intense turn. Like
yeah,
they're organizing an army, getting weapons, like
weapons, yeah.
yeah, to go down on Tattertown with. Like it does feel like intense, like for what this little special should probably be, which is just like junk
Yeah,
being surreal and strange. Like that's probably what this special really is, but they have to have a story here.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it's very intense that Bakshi decided to pick a like story where like a doll goes rogue on her creator and like sets off war against people she has no like purpose with other than to like get back at the creator, I guess.
Yeah, at all. She's like no connection to these people at all. She just decides she wants to rule now that she's been ruled, she's been ruled, I suppose, for so long. Now she wants to
Yeah,
rule. Uh,
yeah.
so that was an odd turn. I did like how when she was gone, Sydney would like go through her stuff and put on her crown and like her royal, robe, and of course she
Yeah,
comes
more
back and
gender stuff going on. Yeah, this thing isn't afraid to tackle the issue head on.
no, it's really not.
No,
Uh,
no.
no, and then yeah, she sends like that John Wayne gun or whatever it is to spy and
Yeah,
take out Debbie. I mean, that's intense. That's crazy.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, that caricature is used in like I'm thinking at least two other Bakshi properties. Definitely the blaxploitation parody did,
Right.
and something else. And I'm not for sure like why he's so interested in showing John Wayne as effeminate, like
I don't know.
effeminate lackeys.
Maybe he had something against John Wayne. I don't know, but
Oh, I'm pretty sure he did by far at this point.
so
Okay.
they find the Christmas tree. They convince him to actually, be a Christmas tree instead of
Yeah.
just, an evergreen that's thrown away. And he's like very bare. Like he's lost a lot of his needles.
Yep.
So
He's like Willem Dafoe at 50, you know? It's
that's,
still rooting, but you know, he ain't the same. He
yeah,
ain't the
yeah.
same.
That was good. Oh man. Uh and so they're starting to, I don't know, kind of come around, but they still don't quite understand what Christmas was or is.
Nope.
And that's when, I mean, she even has to stop a little toy lumberjack from like chopping down the Christmas tree. It's like, well, he's a toy lumberjack. That's what he does,
Yeah.
that's his purpose. And now that he's in this junk town, that's what he knows to do. Anyway,
Yeah.
so she's trying to explain.
Honestly, at this point, from her explanations, I wouldn't understand what Christmas was either.
Well, yeah, she didn't do a very good job of explaining it. Although she did get
No.
very misty, and as she was getting misty, I noticed the lumberjack got misty too. And but then he wanted to cut down the tree anyway. Long
Okay.
story short, Muffet dresses up like Santa to try to stop Debbie. and as she's flying through the air, her little fly carrying her and Sydney the spider, who's dressed as like a reindeer, she meets the real Santa and starts attacking him. And that's when the bombs that she's going to use to attack Tattertown see that they're attacking each other and starts attacking each other, and poor Muffin ends up in jail
Where she belongs.
where she belongs. And now Debbie always has her with her. She says something like that. It's ridiculous how it ends, but she of course ends up with the sack of toys as well at the end. So I guess everything kind of turned out. I hope there was food in those sacks of toys.
I'm not even for sure what makes this a happy ending, but they try to play it like it's a happy ending, and it feels so odd.
Well, I love that the turning point of the whole thing, what she thinks is going to convince them all about Christmas, is she puts on White Christmas by Bing Crosby.
Yeah,
It's
nah.
that it came out of nowhere. Like, where did that come from at all?
She found it in the junk town. Somebody threw it away because it's trash. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I guess. I mean, White Christmas is like a classic. It's odd. And maybe it just happened to be a part of like sometimes, and I hate to go there, but sometimes like when a relative passes away and you don't know what to do
Oh
with their
yeah.
stuff and no one wants to go with their stuff and they end up just like selling it or donating it or getting rid of it. Maybe that's kind of what happened, because yeah, it's like a record player and she like just starts searching through the records and finds it. But just the fact that she like plays it is so out of left field. I don't understand where it came from.
Even barring my obvious hatred for White Christmas, I'm sorry, everyone out there who may be a White Christmas fan. You can enjoy your maudlin schmaltz, all year long. That's fine. I don't care for it. Anyways, even barring that, like, what makes her think that's going to connect with the poor, destitute citizens of Tattertown?
I don't know.
What sentiment could they find in White Christmas of all things? Honestly, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, as a Ralph Bakshi fan, I thought he would have done something that'd be like roll over Beethoven or something. Like, I don't know, like, what? Well, no, Run Run Rudolph. That's the Chuck
There you
Berry
go.
tune.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you
yeah.
go. I could see him doing that as well. I mean, but it's strange because then it just ends. She's in jail. Debbie's like, I'll always, now I always have you with me.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. We don't get any resolution. We don't know if she gets out of Tattertown. I suppose we have to just hope that she eventually escapes. I mean, there's no nothing, no hints of anything.
Meanwhile, literally everyone else is going to go absolutely insane on every street and corner that the eye can see, because whenever they show people just like celebrating, it's just people like bouncing around and like jumping up and down, like falling apart, just all these different like people just doing different stuff. Like, this
Yeah.
is an animation overload of a cartoon. I kind of see why like Nickelodeon might have been put off as their first series.
Yeah.
It's so nuts. Like,
Well, and the other thing, before we move on, the other thing is that it felt very choppy. Like, I think it needed like an extra like 10 minutes, because there was a lot that felt just rushed and cut out.
yeah.
And I think if it had, yeah, maybe just like 10, maybe 15 more minutes in there to kind of transition a little bit better, or explain a few things a little bit more, I think it would have been a much, much more successful program.
Well, I was just gonna say, if they had done this right, they could have had him doing like a special every year.
Yeah.
And it could have been like a Charlie Brown thing where we have like a new Ralph Bakshi holiday Town special going on.
Yeah.
Next year could be Halloween or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Like Will Vinton with his claymation.
Yeah.
So, I do have to, it does make me wonder, what would you say would be your happiest moment or memory of Christmas in Tattertown?
honestly just watching all the Bakshi's creations on the sideline and how they kind of play around like by themselves, almost completely incidental from the plot. I
Yeah.
find more character in that than I do anything else. I definitely also found the John Wayne caricature probably the most interesting element of the film because to see this thing pop up in this little like children's cartoon is incredibly strange and
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. I think for me, I think the best moment, because I don't really remember this special. I remember like the commercial for it, that they were going to show it. That's about
Yeah.
it. I don't remember actually watching it. So for me, I think my happiest memory would, or moment, would be when she's trying to explain Christmas and she makes the little lumberjack cry, because you can tell he's feeling her emotions. Of course, then he
Yeah.
turns around and doesn't work, but I think that's what it would be for me. But now we come to my favorite part of the show, which is a little segment I like to call "Gag Me with the Spoon." So this is where we do our best impression of our least favorite part of the episode. As a guest, I'll let you go first. Just kind of set up the little scene for us, and we'll go from there.
um, yeah, I guess my least favorite part of this whole thing is just Muppet and her voice and the way they create her mannerisms. The way they make her talk is so terrible. I just can't stand it. Like she's so fluctuating all the time with her volume, and it's a disorienting effect. And then you have all these other people that sound just about on the same wavelength, if not the same, the exact same. And it's an overload of
Yes, it is.
intense, like Brooklyn accent. Like it could have been toned down and played so much better, and then the story would feel better because you'd have something that wouldn't be so jarring like
Yeah.
to deal with the whole time. What do you have for this, buddy? Yeah.
Well, that's mine's actually also Muffet. So this is
Muppet.
where
Okay, we both hate Muppet.
this is where she's like coming in. She's like is coming in to meet the spider for the first time, and they're all
Yeah.
just all the animals or whatever. They're kind of going crazy, and he's trying to I don't know what he's trying to do, but
Yeah.
she says something like "Get out of here, you little nitwit! Can't you see the spider's trying to work?" That's
The
jarring.
spider's cool.
The spider was cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. But it does make me wonder. G.I. Joe taught us that knowing is half the battle. What would you say is the other half?
um, Knowing how to get home from the existential hell you live in with discarded junk. That's what I would say the
that's,
other half of the
that's
battle
definitely
is.
half a battle. That's a full battle right there. So that's good. That's better than mine. Mine was so if knowing's half the battle, the other half is stopping an invasion with Christmas.
Oh yeah, yeah. That honestly, that makes a very distinct holiday special for Bakshi because how many people can say that there's an actual war on Christmas in their holiday special?
Not very many, no. Oh man. Rob, it's been funny. It's been fun talking with you. Tell me about your show.
Conversations with Robbie Sherman. It's something I set up to just kind of be a little bit of a vanity project, but I have a lot of cool people that have been willing to donate their time to hang out with me for a minute and go over whatever. I'm going to be doing movie episodes here and there. I'm going to be going through some of the Bakshi filmography, some of the ones that are lesser appreciated in the public domain, though.
Right.
I'm going to be releasing Fritz the Cat by the time you get this episode out. And,
Right. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm also doing a few video game pages on Twitter. I got Sherman Sucks at Sonic, and I just play through like the different Sonic the Hedgehog games, and you could totally watch me suck at them. I have a Dragon Quest page. I've been on Dragon Quest 2, but I have to move on to something else because I'm getting tired of Dragon Quest 2. I gotta fluctuate my
Gotcha.
habits here and there.
Yeah.
I also do some work for Let's Chat with Chris Reville.
Okay.
Great
cool.
guy. Yeah, Chris Reville. Yeah.
Right on. And where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter. I don't really have a Facebook page for any of my podcast accounts, but I have a band page on there if they want to find me through there. I used to have a personal account on Twitter. I'm kind of locked out of that right now, so don't bother following that. Just follow the Conversations with Robbie Sherman page or the other two video game pages. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on there if you look me up.
Right on. Oh man, again, thank you so much for coming on. I've had a lot of fun.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Pleasure.
And I'll end it by saying Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. Christmas is caroling in the snow and candy canes, decorating the tree, and checking us out on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're feeling like Muffet, getting a bag of Christmas presents, leaving us a review on iTunes. Not only does it help us reach more people, but you also get a free sticker. Now, don't forget to check out our merch shop on tpublic.com and our brand new website, courtesy of 'Tis a Podcast Elf, Tom Crow. Later, dudes.
I know you. You're tired of the same old joy of human compassion, overflowing generosity, and quaint, totally anxiety-free coziness of the holidays. You need Christmas to get a little bit weird. I'm Craig Kringle, and I've got you covered. On the Weird Christmas podcast, I talk to a never-ending garland of writers, historians, filmmakers, and rampant weirdos who do their best to make sure we don't forget just how beautifully odd this holiday can be. We cover everything from Krampus to Christmas werewolves, the real winter elves like the Scandinavian Tomten and Nissa, to Iceland's 13 Yule lads. And every year we share a good old traditional Christmas ghost story to keep things festive. I also host an annual flash fiction contest, so we don't have to read Dickens again. So if you're a real traditionalist who wants Christmas to get back to its roots of creepy monsters, acknowledging the frozen, lifeless heart of winter and eating animal heads, come over to the Weird Christmas podcast. Or check out weirdchristmas.com and all the surreal vintage postcards I share on social media. So Merry Christmas, and here's hoping Krampus doesn't whip you off to wherever he's from.